Hi there, and welcome to Star Trek Lost Stars. My name is Tony Morrow, and welcome to the show. Funny little mix-up there with the counter. I tried to correct it in the intro, but you kind of saw that, and it didn't take. All good, all good. We're here now, and thank you for joining us if you're joining us live. If you are joining us live, you will see that I'm monitoring our live stream on YouTube. I've got the Twitch live stream on my phone to the left of me. And if you're joining us on Facebook, thank you so much for joining us live. And if you're catching us on the replay, then welcome all the same. Looking forward to getting into the interesting details of today's episode. But before I get started, if you are interested in all things Star Trek, you like wargaming, you like turn-based strategy, then this is the channel for you. Here at Star Trek Lost Stars, we are playing a turn-based strategy game set in the Starfleet universe, which is really Star Trek, the original series, and everything around it. We're playing this turn-based strategy game online with you on this show for you to be able to participate and join us and enjoy the show. And we're doing that all together. So if you enjoy watching and seeing and following us along as the story and the campaign of this evolves, then please feel free to give us a thumbs up, a little like. Maybe if you want to see the more episodes as they come, then tag that subscribe button and turn on the notifications. And we, of course, go live almost every weekend. Last weekend was an exception, but generally speaking, every weekend we go live. Today it'll be twice, and you'll be able to catch the latest updates on the game and so on. But in today's show, let's talk about what we're doing today. So today we're talking about the sneaky tricks and the sneaky attacks that are going on in the turns, who are doing them. And what are the consequences? What kind of sneaky tactics are they employing to be able to get their sneaky tricks to go? Also, a tactical assessment of what's going on in the current war between the Federation and the Paravians, and then of course a little chit chat about the big announcement that's going to be coming later today, which will be the second live stream that you'll see on the channel. So yeah, please put the notifications on to be able to catch that live stream when we go live later today. That'll be 6 o'clock Pacific time. But if you are catching us on the replay, then feel free to go check that out on the channel. Or if you're in a different time zone, then even more important to set those notifications so that you don't miss that show. Let's do a quick little bit of housekeeping before we get started. As you can see, there's a little bit of a different lighting setup here today. Got a purple background or purple light in the background as opposed to the blue or red of before. What do you think? This is what they call a 3-point or three light setup. I got a kind of a light shining on my face. I got a light in the background there shining on the background. And then I've got a hair light. Now I know you look at my hair, you think, Tony, you don't have any hair. It's kind of redundant, isn't it? I thought the same thing. But why don't you tell me in the comments about what you think about this hair light thing, this light coming from over here. Does it do anything? Does it separate me from the background? And depending on the contrast, I've noticed, for example, I have two monitors in front of me. One is basically a TV and the other one is a monitor. And as I move the video from one to the other, I can see more or less detail depending on which monitor it is on. So I'm curious what you think about the separation of the light on the background. If you can see there. Anyways, there's a light shining on the back there. And whether it's washed out for you or whether you can see the difference, I would love to know. So again, thank you so much for joining us today. Let's get into it, shall we? I'm going to jump into the map. Woo! All right, so here we are. We've got the map up in front of us here. Let me go through the turns because I just want to make sure that we kind of follow up and see where we're at. So this map that's up right now, this is turn 94. We're going to be going up to turn 96 here in a second. So the thing I want to draw your attention to, and actually what I'll do so that I don't screw things up too much, I'll switch my head here. So you can see over in the corner, not in the corner, on the side, you've got this gravity well that popped up, and this green or gray and black fleet box. So this is the Juggernaut faction. One of their wonderful perks that they have is that they are able to populate these temporary wormhole or gravity wells, throw a fleet through them or something through them, and then sort of poke around on the other side. So these guys had popped up the previous turn in 93, and in response to that, I had sent this fleet of ships here. So that's one build cycle for me, which is a total of 5 E4Ms, so the frigates, and then a cruiser, which is the D6M. So we sent these over here to this this base station on this planet to, you know, defend against these guys. Now, generally speaking, when it's an sort of a non-player character, the movements are randomized. But there's a sort of an unearthly intelligence behind this particular non-player faction. That is the game master. But also there's a personality and a character behind the Juggernaut faction. And in this case, what they're doing is they're basically probing and testing to see how their ships fare against the other players or the other factions in the galaxy. And they're just kind of testing things out. Think of it like, well, it's a constant test. So there was a really good chance that this fleet, when detecting, because when you are within 1 hex of something, you can detect it when you're a ship, assuming you don't have special sensors. So when they're within 1 hex of the planet and the base, they can detect the base's signature, if you want to call it like that. So they know that there's something over there, and it's got stabilizing. It's got not stabilizing sensors. It's stabilizing. My goodness, I've lost the word. But nonetheless, it can detect that it's a base. So it knows that there's something there. And in the context of the battle that ensued, the Juggernaut faction moved into that hex and was looking to see what it could find out. To give you maybe a different perspective on this, when you're early in the game and you're sort of discovering everybody and you haven't made connections yet, you'll be able to detect, if you're just a ship alone with no special sensors, you can detect within 1 hex of your ship that there is a large, a small class vessel, how many of those vessels there may be within 1 hex of you. So basically that's what they've done. They detected that there were these ships there, that there was a base there, and so they moved towards it to test it. And so they perceive this as being a good test of their combat capability. Now, one thing I didn't do in advance of today's episode, and I'm just going to pop over here while I do this, I am going to just pull up the email and give you a sense of what ships were in that contingent that attacked me. Now, one of the things is that they had, where are we here? So whiskey 14, boom. Okay, so they had the Juggernaut faction, that is, and let me get back to this. There we go. So the Juggernaut faction had a cruiser, a light cruiser, a destroyer, and 3 frigates. That doesn't seem like very much, right? Like that's 6 ships, no big deal. But when you look at the stats for these ships, and I'll show it to you in a second. So I'm just going to write it down again for myself, CLDD and FFs. They have some unique sort of capabilities. So let's take us back to the map here. And up here, the corner of Vassal, and I'll just minimize this bit here. Makes it a little easier. So I'll pop, oh, of course I did that now. Pop up ships, and we can pick the, I should be able to pick the Juggernaut faction. Why am I not? There we go. Okay, so Dromedans, minor factions, and there we go, Juggernaut, bang. So here you can see the Juggernaut faction. So let me illustrate for you how more powerful these ships are. So you might not be able to see this in the corner, but the cruiser, right above my head here, the cruiser has 12 attack, 12 defense. The light cruiser has 8 attack, 8 defense. Both of those ships are better than my cruisers, and I've got M or middle era cruisers. The destroyers are 6 and 6, and the frigates, are 5. Now you'll notice on the counter for the CA, the cruiser, it has a little plus sign there. And a plus sign in this game indicates a mauler capability. What a mauler is think of it like, so when you picture Star Trek, and you picture those like ship-to-ship battles, you can like picture a weave of ships kind of dancing amongst each other. and phaser fire going back and forth, and photon torpedoes or quantum torpedoes, or in this era, photon torpedoes, and disruptors and things like that going back and forth. And so basically multiple weapon systems firing throughout the engagement. But a mauler is, think of it like a giant cannon. It has a focused weapon system so that it allows to focus all its combat capability in one sort of attack. And I may be dating myself a bit here, but when you go back to when you think back to, and I think of like old school animation, maybe not that old school, Macross or Robotech, two names for the same thing. So Robotech, in its first iteration, i.e. Macross, had SDF-1. SDF-1 had this combat capability where these giant pylons on its back would tilt forward, and it would channel all its energy into these pylons, and it would shoot a massive beam of energy. And it was used to be able to destroy other ships. And so think of a mauler in this context. It's a giant weapon system. Well, it's a focused weapon system in the ship designed to be able to focus and fire on a single target. Now, the only problem is with that weapon system, and there's some rules in the rule set around the limitations around maulers, but effectively, they are most effective / only effective against stationary or slow-moving targets. If you are a conventional ship and you're dancing around, the maulers are not effectively used against you. They can still use the mauler capability, but there's some negatives there. And we can dive into the mauler rule set in another episode. Not enough time necessarily here today. Maybe once we see maulers being deployed by some of the other players and how that is playing out in any particular conflict, there would be a great time for that. But effectively what a mauler can do is they're base killers and or capital ship killers. And they can be used very effectively to be able to cause focused or directed damage on specific targets. So in this case, the cruiser is already an incredibly powerful relative to my ship's vessel. It's 12 attack and defense, and the best thing I have is a Dreadnought right now, and it has an 8/8. So my Dreadnought is the same as his light cruiser. Ridiculous. And then he's got these other ships. So he brings this combat fleet to attack me. And my fleet includes those ships you saw there, as well as a D4N, which is a diplomatic cruiser. So long story short, the fight went not in my favor. Not that I would expect any differently, really. When the battle was all complete, and of course the results are in a different email. Tisk. Let me scroll down here. Apologize. I'm hunting for it. Okay, so here we are. So the results were that I lost. I lost in the fight. Initially, I crippled a bunch of my 5 of my E4s. I lost an E4, and I lost a D6. No, that's not right. That can't be right because it was before that. This is me hunting down the turns in the emails here. Either way, so what happened was I lost a couple of my frigates, even though I'd sent like 20 frigates there, and I lost one of my D4s. So I lost my D4 D4M. D4N. I lost my cruiser, my D6 cruiser, and so I lost the command ship. I lost so that's the sequence of events here. So he initially attacked me, and then I followed up with a counterattack. So when he initially attacked me, he just popped the base and destroyed my my diplomatic cruiser and crippled some of my frigates, and then bugged out. And then I went after him, and he was able to destroy my cruiser with a targeted attack from the CA. And I was able to eliminate the majority of his ships, but the cruiser still survived. In the combat, one of the things that was sort of conveyed to me as a piece of intelligence that I got was that the Juggernaut ships were able to regenerate their shields by 3 points per turn. What does that mean? That means that in the overall development of damage that you do in a turn, let's say, and we talked about this, basic summary is that you have the total number of ships that you have, and they have attack factors. Add all those numbers together. You take that number and you go to the battle intensity rating, or BIR. That's a table that we showed in another episode. And on that table, you've determined, as the battle starts, the battle intensity rating goes from 1 to 10, or I suppose 0 to 10. And if the battle, whatever the battle intensity rating is, you roll a 1d6. And along that battle intensity rating, there's a series of numbers, percentages of how much of the total attack potential that you have is actually inflicted upon the enemy. It can be as low as like 10%, and it can be as high as 50%. And there are some things that can influence that. Usually electronic warfare can influence that. But let's say, for example, in the best case scenario, I'm able to develop, or I'm able to generate, in this case, let's say I can generate 20 points of damage. It was a little bit more than that, but let's say I can develop 20 points of damage. And I've got the best battle rating possible, and I get 50% of that damage is able to be inflicted on the enemy. That means I have 10 points of damage that I can inflict on my opposing force, my OPFOR. With the shield regeneration ability, they'll take 5 damage and regenerate 3. So what they can do is they can spread that damage across their ships. So they take 5 damage across 1 and 2 frigates. Let's say 2 frigates will take 5 damage each, and they would be crippled at that point. But because of their shield regeneration capability, they regenerate 3 points of that damage, so they're back to only having 2 down of that 5. So I have to do another round of 10 damage to be able to knock those 2 down to a point where they're crippled. And so what came through in the result there was that basically every time I do damage to these ships, they can regenerate 3 points of damage every battle round, which effectively means I have to do 8 points of damage on a frigate of 5. I have to do 8 points of damage to it to cripple it, and then once it's crippled, that capability is gone. Ridiculous. So in the final battle, I was able to bring the Dreadnought and 15 E4Ms against a crippled cruiser, or the crippled Juggernaut cruiser, and I was able to destroy it. Couple things about the Mauler capability. Once you're crippled, you can't use it, and that's usually the case for any of the special abilities. Once they're crippled, with the exception of EW, you can't really use that capability. So once they're crippled, they can't use that capability, and then of course whatever damage you do, it takes them out. So I was able to take them out. Let me take a second, just because I can see there's some chat here, and I'm going to take a quick look. So Jim says, just at the beginning, before we got started, Jim was looking at a late start. So I'm sorry, Jim. Being on the Pacific Coast here, I had to take my little girls in for a haircut, so that took up my morning, hence the 2:30 start this afternoon. Daniel Eastland saying, howdy, looking forward to this. Hey, Daniel, how you doing? Welcome to the show. Jim says, you should play in the next campaign, Daniel. Oh, well, Daniel, if you're interested in something like that, and I'm sure I'll get along the comments here, then be sure to tune in for the special announcement later today. Hint, hint. Daniel says, that sounds like a capital idea. Daniel, Jim, it sounds like you guys might know each other. Yes, likes caps. What? Jim says yes, like caps lock, like captain's logs. Captain logs not being, of course, the your business in the bathroom when you're at sea, but rather the captain's log from ADB, I'm sure. It's a terrible joke. I'm so sorry. Jim says, Maulers have very narrow arcs. So true when dealing in SFB. So for those of you who might be catching this on the replay, Starfleet Battles, another game put out by Amarillo Design Bureau. Starfleet Battles is the sort of tactical ship-to-ship simulator system that is the tactical level of what this is, which is the strategic level. It's like Total War. The Total War series of games, you play turn to turn in the strategic level, moving stuff around, managing your cities and various other things. But when you fight the battles, you have the option to go to the battlefield and manage your troops in real time. That would be the tactical level. So, for example, if you like Starfleet Battles, there was a game now many years ago. Well, not that many years ago. No, Tony. It was many years ago. I apologize. Called Starfleet Command. Starfleet Command was a computer game version of Starfleet Battles. There was 1, 2, and 3. 2 was pretty good. 3 was the best by far. Actually, I think three came out right around the time that Star Trek Nemesis came out, because I remember they had features in that game around that the ships in that movie, and so just great ship to ship battle simulator, and you can do that of course in tabletop. And so when you're doing that with Maulers are in SFB. Starfleet Battles, but they, like Jim's referring to, they have very narrow arcs, and it's you got to catch people in a special, like, corner them, I guess is the best way to. You got to line them up and catch them at the right moment. Tony, you missed Dan's Juggernaut comment. Juggernauts, like the old captain's log. Oh, right, yes, yeah, okay, yeah. So Juggernauts, the Juggernauts are in captain's logs, and as far as I understand it, now keep in mind, I have to declare my ignorance here. I'm not a huge ADB aficionado, in that I don't get into all the captain's logs. I don't subscribe to them. I don't get into them. I am a huge, of course, Star Trek fan, and I love this game. But I don't get into the back end of those captain logs and things. Those specific details are specifically some of the players in our game, the game master and another one of the players who's been on this show a couple times, Mike. They're really into. They get those captain's logs, and they do a huge contribution to this game with regards to incorporating some of those captain's logs, addendums, lessons learned, new pieces of information, wherever they are, add them into the game. So the Juggernaut faction is that same faction. We're incorporating them in the game very much in a sort of like Borg-esque kind of way, like a super duper faction that's coming in and just cleaning house. As a reminder, the Juggernaut faction was introduced into this particular campaign after we lost a player early on in the campaign, but we still had enough players to carry on with the campaign, so we just used the Juggernaut faction to kind of fill a gap, if you want to call that. In future campaigns, which will relate to the live stream later today, that will be sort of discussed. So the Juggernaut faction is this sort of mystery faction. When it comes to the Klingon perspective in this particular campaign, we've incorporated them in the context of this. The beginning of the game was. The beginning of the game was the history of the Klingon faction was that we were dominated by this larger, more sophisticated, technologically advanced species we call the Old Kings, and they subjugated the Klingon species and pounded them into pavement over the course of their tenure, owning the Klingons. And that there was a mystery faction, a great enemy that was referred to, that came in and basically wiped out the Old Kings. And in the context of this game, the Juggernaut faction is identified as that old enemy. It was not by far probably my worst writing yet, but I did come up with a quick in-game role-playing message about my first interaction with the Juggernaut faction. I will give you the short version. So in the initial conflict with this Juggernaut fleet that attacked us, there was a root piece of code within the operating system of the ship that was triggered. All the ship operating systems and all the technology based in Klingon vessels is reverse engineered from the Old King days. Old Kings operated in a much more advanced level of technology. We've reverse engineered them and slowly building them back up as we're developing technology on the Klingon side. But obviously, we are building off of the Old King technology when it comes to the operating system and so on and so forth. In the first encounter with the Juggernauts, a string of code had been activated, which initiated a program that was an AI-based program to be able to assist in the identification, analysis, and technological reverse engineering of Juggernaut tech, because the old kings had faced the exact same problem when they had encountered them. An initial encounter on the fringes of the empire with the old kings had resulted, massive fleet from the old kings and a small fleet from the Juggernauts. The old kings wiped them out. And then after that initial encounter, there was a series of encounters with ever increasingly larger fleets from the Juggernaut, more advanced ships, and in random positions, representing their ability to populate these wormholes and show up anywhere. So catching the old kings out of position, breaking down their supply chain network, and basically crippling the kingdom to the point where their subjugator races, Klingons included, rose up and overthrew them. And so that's where we're at right now. So long story short, AI was triggered, initiated this protocol to be able to help identify and sort of harvest technology from the Juggernauts, and we attacked them. Now, one of the things, the reason why that piece of roleplay figures in is because one of the perks of defeating Juggernaut factions in this game, in this campaign, as you defeat them, you get like a tech boost, because you are able to learn from their ships, the wreckage of their ships. This theoretically would work no matter what faction you are if you're encountering a higher tech faction. But in the context of the Juggernauts, they're like a top-end GW tech versus our, in this case, early or mid-era tech. And so there's quite a disparity there between the technologies, so we're learning quite a bit from encountering them. So, yes. That's where we're at. So, yes, Daniel, if you are interested in this kind of stuff, then please tell me more. Let me follow back up with where we were. Let me minimize this and get back to the map. Okay, so let me give you a quick short and dirty about this. So this is turn 94. The fleet was initially encountered, followed up with this interaction. So as you can see, a bunch of crippled ships got redeployed for repair. Green Fleet was here with a large amount of frigates, and then there was this remaining cruiser. And then the next turn, we popped that cruiser. So a couple crippled ships here, and here we are. Moved a tug out this way because you will notice that on this particular planet, it is now DEV1, meaning devastated, because he destroyed bugger Juggernauts. They destroyed the fleet that was there, forcing me to retreat. So annoying. They forced me to retreat. They destroyed the base and they devastated the planet. So that affected my income. Normally a 3 point economic point planet is now a 1 as I'm trying to recover it. Terrible. Quick sip. But as they say, keep calm and carry on. So, destroyed the Juggernaut faction and carried on with moving this tug out this way. Built this tug, moved it out this way. We're going to repopulate the bases in this area and basically push, just like we were pushing to explore the top end of the map here, we're going to start pushing to explore this way. As you may have seen in previous turns, because of the war with the Paravians, sort of big hurdle or obstacle in that regard, in the sense that it really cut down our exploration. And just so happens that at the same time, I happened to lose a bunch of exploration ships due to basically being attacked. And that was a huge pain in my posterior. So now I have to repopulate all those exploration ships. So you'll notice in this particular turn, this is turn 96. This is the current turn. Populated or built a Y era, and these are the exploration, the small exploration freighters that I can build. So I built one of these, and it's going out that way. Got another one coming, and some more exploration ships that I got to populate because I need to increase my ability to explore, expand, and sort of build up that economy. You'll also notice as we scroll down here in turn 96, a couple little things. Let me. I'll go back. Let's just go here for a sec. So this is turn, I just went back to turn 95. So let's go to turn let's just see the progression here. So this is turn 94, and you can see around the Federation here. So you got a couple of fleets in this area, and they are pushing into Paravian space. Again, this is turn 94. You can see that the Juggernaut fleet, which had entered into this area, is also there. We go to turn 95, and you can see that the Feds popped that base that was there, took this resource, or rather liberated it. The only reason they don't, the reason why it's white as opposed to blue is because they don't have supply to that resource. As soon as they have supply to that resource, they'll get it. And that's why he's building this YBS here. As soon as he builds this YBS and has a fleet here, he'll be able to take that resource and add it to his income. And the Juggernaut faction is also, they've just liberated the resource because they don't have an ability to harvest it. But if they continue moving, then I'm going to guess the Feds are going to come in the back end and take that. But as we go to the next turn, you will see here in turn 96 that the Feds have moved back to consolidate. Again, they have this resource. This YBS, as we move the ships away, will be finished in 113 fall, which is turn 96. So at the end of this turn, once this turn is submitted, this will be finished. And then this base will also be finished, which means they'll have access to this too once the Juggernaut gets out of the way. Now, what I see happening here is one of two things. One, the Feds may choose to continue to push up into Paravian space, very likely, and leave the Juggernaut faction to cause havoc, cry havoc, and let slip the dogs of war as they move into Paravian space. I expect that will most likely be the case, because why not? Yeah, they're going to stir the pot and cause havoc. Going to the previous turn again, I just want to draw attention to this piece. So you'll see that there are some fleets that are being put together here by the Paravians, and again, they have this gravity well right here. This gravity well pops out right here in Tango Tango 35 with a YDK and a couple ships to defend it. Well, if we go to turn 96, you will notice something is missing. The YDK's gone, the planet's been devastated, and there's this fleet of Paravian ships here. Sneaky, sneaky. Now, how can they do this? To be very clear, they do not have the ability to run supply through a gravity well because supply requires two-way, back and forth. So if they don't have back and forth through a two-way wormhole, how are they able to maintain supply? Well, the Paravians, like the Mongols on which they're sort of modeled, have an ability to raid, and that's kind of one of their specialties. So like whether you're the Vikings of the North Atlantic or the Mongol hordes of the steppes, they have this ability to raid, and really anybody can do this, but the Paravians are good at it. They have an ability to raid, and they have technologies that support them in this. One of their abilities is they call them mother pods. I might have the name of that wrong. Let me just pull up Shrike Fleet, and I will... Where's the tug? Mother YMS. I think they call them mother pods. So it's a P for pod, and then YMS, Y era, M mother, mothership, I think it's called. So mothership pod. So what they do is basically it allows them to have this sort of reservoir of resources that they can then use to sort of feed the rest of the ships, whether that's food, weapons, fuel, whatever. That allows them to be able to operate independently, fully supplied behind enemy lines. And that's what they've done. So what's interesting about this, which to be fair for the Feds is a huge pain in the butt. So this fleet, the Shrike fleet, so they don't necessarily have an ability to repair ships, right? So that's a sort of a failing of this tactic. However, if we, whoops, I don't know why I did that. I already had it up. Shrike fleet, as you can see here, I'll just put it next to my head. You can see here that it's got 3 cruisers. These cruisers are 8.8s, which are just as good, if not better, than the Fed's best cruiser. The Fed's best cruiser currently is a 7.8, 7 attack, 8 defense. So his cruisers are better. He's got a YCA there as well, like just a Y or a cruiser. So, you know, what are you going to do? Interesting to note that the ships that he chose to cripple are destroyers. Destroyers are a straight 5 ship, and they are so three Y era and 2 M era ships that he chose to cripple. Interesting, because if it was me, I would have crippled the YCA and destroyed that first rather than having these crippled destroyers along the way, unless there's a way for them to repair them. But I don't see that happening necessarily, so that'll be interesting to see how that works. So you've got this fleet, and they got the tug, which is hosting the mother pods, so that's why those are there. He's got a YCA. So basically, the 4 CAs and the YCA are the command platforms, with the CAs being the heavy guns. He's got a total of 7 destroyers, which is nothing to sneeze at, and then also looks like 4 YDDs. So, like I say, he's got the M era DDs and the Y era DDs here in this task group, but there's more than enough chaff here to be able to soak up damage for a while. What's interesting, though, is that with the raiding ability, you can raid planets and other resources and basically build out your timeline to be able to continue to operate independently. There's, if you want to think of it like a gas tank, the gas tank's full right now, and as he goes turn after turn after turn, the gas tank will slowly work its way down. So there's a clock on how long these ships can operate independently. Now, because they're fully supplied, they could basically work their way back to Paravian space, which is one option. But as you will see, that there is we'll call it a wall of fleet assets over here on the Fed side, and they are potent. He's got battle fleets 1, 2, and 4 right on the border there. So let's just take a look what's there. Battle fleets 4, that's the closest one. So not a lot of ships there. A CL, a couple F frigates, and a cruiser. Looks like that was a build cycle, and he just kind of moved it up there. So not a terrible, not a significant amount of ships that are going to cause a big hurdle. Let's see here. Battle Fleet 1 that's the big one. So he's got the most number of ships in this one. I mean, geez Louise, he's got 23 M frigates. Wow. 7 light cruisers, 6 of these Corvette style ships. I mean, that's the big fleet. That's the fleet that's going to cause the most amount of problems. And then Battlefleet 2, let's see, Fed, Battlefleet 2, what's in Battlefleet 2? So Battlefleet 2 and Battlefleet 4 look to be very similar. Basically, those are build cycles. That looks like to me like that's the build cycle that the Feds build every round. Basically, between maybe there was you had to make a compromise of building something else instead of 4 frigates that one turn. So that's what that looks like to me. Yeah. So I mean, it doesn't make any sense for the Paravians to work their way back that way to go through that blockade of ships, but rather move closer into the Fed sort of homeworld area and just cause havoc, whether that's blowing out these YDKs or popping a whole bunch of YBSs. I mean, if it's my perspective, I want to cause as much havoc as possible, break up supply lines, and reduce the income of the Feds. And the first one I can see is this planet down here in Uniform 42, because he has full supply. He has ships that can move 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Boom. I would pop that. So basically, he could move down here, pop the YBS, retreat into Uniform 42, and devastate that planet when he hits it, which would cause a lot of headaches for the Fed player. And the Fed player only has, in his home fleet, where's home fleet here? Fed home fleet. It's kind of sneaky how he's hidden some things here. Hold on. Okay. So basically, he's got 10 frigates, not insignificant, a cruiser, a light cruiser, some more frigates. So that looks like his build. That's what his build cycle is every turn. So you've got 10, 13 frigates, a light cruiser, a scout, and a cruiser. So that would be enough to cause significant trouble to the Paravians, but the Paravians have initiative, which means they'll move first. So based on what you see right here, right now, they'll be able to move down here, pop this planet, probably a base, and cause havoc. And if he's smart about it, the Paravians that is, then he'll scatter his forces as much as possible to cause the most amount of damage. For example, those Y ships, like his YCA and those 4 YDDs, that can pop a YBS. So why not do that? Move to 1, 2, 3. Like he can pop this base. Like he can do something along those lines fairly easily, while the rest of the ships will move with the tugs to, again, pull supply from them. So that'll be interesting to see how that works. I'm very interested to see next turn to see what kind of havoc they'll do. Now, one thing about this is that it's a one-way trip. Because they went through that gravity well and it's not a two-way wormhole, they're stuck on the other side, and he's going to lose those ships. The only advantage of what he's done is, A, to be able to disrupt the economy and supply chain of the Federation, or the supply network of the Federation, and draw his attention away from sort of the frontier war against the Paravians. But it's a pretty expensive cost to doing that, because you've basically sacrificed these ships. You don't have an ability to recover them, repair them, or somehow retain the investment that you put into them. It's a fire and forget solution. You put them in there, cause a lot of havoc, and maybe in the long term they're going to cause some significant damage EP wise, but it's going to be tough overall to be able to. There's a strategic reason to do that, and it's sort of tactically, it makes sense if you're trying to draw the attention of the opponent, of the opposite player, away from what you're trying to do. Totally makes sense in that regard. But the thing is, in this case, that's the bulk of what the Paravians have. So what are they going to do otherwise? One of the things I did notice is that they've moved home fleet, which you can see here. They've moved home fleet down, and they'll be moving it sort of into this theater. Home fleet's a fairly decent sized fleet, but it's not enough to really make a difference overall. Interesting that the Lyrans, because again, the Lyrans are under the Paravian control, aren't moving down to support the feds. Interesting. Whereas, for example, the Borak have moved all their stuff up here to this particular YDK, along with the Tholians, to be able to protect this particular supply point, because they want that supply point to do trade back and forth. Yeah, so it'll be interesting. Let me quickly just go to the comments again as we go forward here. So Daniel says, so this is all happening during the early years prior to year 130. Yeah, so well, let me read the other comment first before I answer that. Daniel says he'll need to cause more economic damage than these ships cost. Exactly. Okay, so let's answer the first question first. So because this is a open campaign, so the open map, what ends up happening here is the this isn't sort of the conventional tabletop game. If you've played this game before, and I'm sure, Daniel, you have, and for anyone else who's watching who has, there is obviously the map, the board, and you play the game. This particular and the original game is set fundamentally in the middle or general war years, because the entire thing happens in the GW era. There have been additions or modules that have come out from ADB, that populate the early years. So if you think about it, and this doesn't translate exactly, but in the spirit of understanding sort of the time frame of this all, think about the early years as being Archer, the Enterprise series in Captain Archer. So the W era is like the first Enterprise series. Warp 5 capable ships, they are fairly decent, but I mean, and it's like a golden age when it comes to space travel, but they're not really like fantastic. They're in this series, for example, when I look at the D3 is a W era, D4 is a Y, and D6 is an M. So if you look at that progression, think of the D3 with a 3 attack and 5 defense. That's like a Enterprise era ship. And then the next one up from that would be if there had been another series of Enterprise, there was discussion about having an upgrade to the NX series. That was the Enterprise. And it would have a secondary hull. And if there was, then that could potentially be the Y era ship. And Y era would have, slightly better weapons, slightly better speeds and movement capabilities. As far as the game goes, it's like W era ships can move 3 hexes, Y era can move 4, and M era can move 6, and so on and so forth. So when we talk about M era, that is really like the beginning of the M era is Captain Pike and the Enterprise. So whether that's the Cage from the original series. We still haven't seen Strange New Worlds yet as far as the new series that's coming out. I would rather dismiss Discovery as a point of reference in this regard because, again, Starfleet universe doesn't include all that stuff. As far as an IP, it's separate. So think of more like Shatner, Kirk, that era, and not the JJ universe. So if you think about that, it's very much sort of early era Star Trek. Christopher Pike is M era, and as we get towards GW is much more akin to, we'll call it the movies. The X ships that come at the tail end of GW, that's very much the movies like Star Trek 1 to 6. That's kind of that bandwidth of ships. Yeah. So, and yes, going back to the point around those Paravian ships behind the lines, they're going to have to do way more damage than they're currently doing because those ships cost a lot to build, cost a lot to deploy, and that's a lot of EP invested in those ships to put them in that position. He's going to have to do a lot more damage, destroying bases, disrupting like planets and the economy from that. Each base is 10 EP. A YDK is worth 20 EP. So, I mean, like, he's done a fair amount of damage already. He's crippled a developing planet, so that has an income of 2 EP per turn. He can't really cripple a colony. That's not an option. They'll still have a 1 EP income. So he's disrupted the EP the income by 1. He's popped at least a YDK. Let's just go back a turn and see what was there. Yeah, like there was a YDK in it over top the colony. So he blew out a YDK, which is worth 20 EP. He blew out, it looks like 3 CLs, so those are 5 EP a pop. So that's a 35 EP worth of damage. That's not nothing. And he's crippled this planet, which is going to be at least 10 EP worth of lost income. 14 EP worth of lost income as it sort of recovers, not assuming that he doesn't deploy a hospital ship. Hospital ships can accelerate the recovery in the last phase of, so it's devastated for 10 turns and then it's recovering for, I think it's 4. And if you have a hospital ship there, that can cut that time in half. So, let's say it was 12. So 12 EP lost. 12 EP would be, 35, so we'll get to 47 as far as total EP damage done as of right now. That's not terrible. And there's more to come. I think he should, if I was him, like I say, cripple this planet down here. This is a minor planet, which does 3 EP. So if he can cripple that, that's a 2 EP impact on income, and then pop a couple of these bases along the way. That'd be awesome. I think that would be probably the best case scenario. Pop a YBS and cripple that base before the feds, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, before the feds are able to reach out and touch him back. That would probably be the best case scenario. That would be my argument anyway. So that's the way that looks. So let's move on to the second point now, which is the tactical assessment of, I just realized I was doing that all without showing you the map. Haha. So, right. So what I was talking about was this planet down here was the planet he needed to cripple. The YBS is the base I think he should destroy. And this home fleet is the fleet that's going to reach out and touch him. And like I say, it's got enough punch to it that it'll probably cause a significant amount of damage. He won't win the fight necessarily, depending on where it happens, especially since he'll have a scout with him. But like I say, there'll be a significant amount of damage one way or the other. Of course, the Paravians can be sneaky about it, and they can choose to retreat after one round of combat and then still fight, which is one way of doing it, which is probably what I would do. So the tactical assessment of where we're at. So let's do a quick little EP calculation. So right now the Federation are at 66.5 for their EP. That's after the crippling of that one EP resource. So they went from 67.5 to 66. Like I say, they're probably going to get hit with that, with some more EP damage. So we can reasonably assume that they'll be down to a 65 or 64.5 next turn. Other than that, the Paravians are still at 52.5. The disposition of ships here, it looks like once the Feds have finished building these 2 YBSs, which are going to be finished this turn, they're going to move to claim at least these 2 resources. So if they claim those 2 resources, that makes up the difference for their lost EP, so they'll stay at 66. But they'll probably want to be building more bases further in, most likely on these resources or something close to it, which will put them in a position to be able to reach out and touch this this gravity well. If I'm the Feds, I want to eliminate the ability of the Paravians to do what they just did to me. So pop and hold this gravity well. The alternative would be focus on the high value target, which is this concentration of resources up here. Take out these 4 resources and the bases surrounding it, and that will cause a significant problem. Allow the Juggernauts to keep doing what they're doing, which will be incrementally creep towards probably the rest of the Paravians. If they move in this direction, then they will continue to cause havoc. If, for whatever reason, the Juggernauts start to move, which they probably won't, but if they do move towards the Feds, then pop it. Like, go out of your way and eliminate it quickly, because you'll get the sort of the tech benefit of eliminating them. And the Paravians don't have anything substantial that's going to threaten you in this time frame anyway. So it makes sense to pop them and then go back. Otherwise, leave them to do their business and cause more havoc for the Paravians, because the Paravians don't have any significant fleet that could probably deal with these guys in any competent way. So that'll be interesting how that goes. So that's the Paravian Federation conflict. I think would be best described as having a little bit of a hiccup right now. The Paravians have done a very good job of sort of destabilizing the Federation position. They have, by putting this fleet in its where it is right now, they're behind enemy lines. They're out of reach of most of all the fleets that could reach that could be a threat to them, and they're going to cause havoc and disruption behind the front that the Feds have created. So that's highly effective. And really, it's the best that they could do in the situation that they're in. This is like the definition of asymmetric warfare. And because as of right now, the Federation is just too powerful in opposition for the Paravians to take on head-to-head. And they have to do something to distract them or draw their attention away from where they're currently focused on. So that's what that looks like. Another sort of last piece of information on the Klingon side. Actually, you know what? Let's take a quick, before we do that, let's do a quick tour of the fleet cap, because I thought this was interesting. So the Borak, if you recall from the EP that we just did, the Borak are at 70 EP, so they got the most amount of money, right? But they only have 74 ships. Why? Why do they only have 74 ships? My bet is that they are doubling down, not only on their expansion, but their R&D. They are spending tons of money on R&D to be able to fast track a lot of technologies, because I think they're probably a little bit behind the ball when it comes to R&D. No problem. That makes sense. Feds are currently at 134 ships, by far the biggest sort of offensive force in the game. We were kind of in spitting distance, the Klingons that is, we're in spitting distance of them, but that we've fallen behind because they're still at a war economy right now, and they're plowing ahead with building more and more ships. We are not able to do that because we're not currently at war, so we're kind of falling behind them a little bit in that regard. The Juggernaut, well, the Juggernaut's only showing one because in order not to reveal or sort of like tell his hand. The Juggernaut faction is not populating the fleet boxes so that we can't tell what's in those fleets. The Klingons here are at 109. 109 ships, that is. You can see that we've got 404 total attack factors to the 446 of the Feds. Again, that's just talking about the kind of ships that they're putting out. They've got more of them. Their total defense factors are more than ours. Like, the Feds are they're just the biggest, baddest, dog in the fight at the moment. Kzinti, Lyran, Orion, those are all minor factions, so not too much to worry about. The Paravians currently have 69 ships. Interesting about that puts them in this, that puts them in the same ballpark as the Borak, and the fact that they have an attack factor that's greater than the Borak is interesting. They've got a few less ships, but they've got more attack and defense, or more attack factors anyway, than the Borak. I think the Borak again are focusing on non-offensively capable ships because they're waiting to get to a certain tech level, and then you're going to see them explode. They're going to just build a ton of offensive ships. They probably have a threshold where they like their sweet spot. I don't know what it is, but I'm going to guess that they have a sweet spot when they get a certain tech. They're going to just start populating ships like nobody's business, and they're going to cause havoc. And the Tholians, which of course are our neighbors, big red in the top left here, they are at 99 ships, total of 166 attack factors and 376 defense. Like I say, I'm not too worried about them. Generally speaking, their total attack factors are low. This is based on kind of the ship design that they have. Defense factors are high relative to their attack factors. And also, if you think about what they've been focusing on, they've been focusing on this sort of diplomatic approach to be able to populate, or rather integrate, all these sort of minor factions that have shown up. So there's a planet here that popped up. They sent a diplomat there. There's another one here. There was one in the top corner here, and there was one here that they incorporated. This one, it was a big get because it's a major planet, which is a 5 EP gain. So big. One thing to note, and it'll be interesting to monitor, is Juggernaut fleet has populated or thrown in a fleet right here, and it's in a sweet spot because it can, and it will most likely go straight towards this base, assuming it can detect it. And once it pops this base, it'll move its way down. I expect this planet will basically become isolated, and when it's isolated, it can't contribute to your economy. It just kind of saves and stacks the EP in that location until you can get access to it again. And this Juggernaut faction, based on my experience with them, is going to be a huge pain in the butt for the Tholians because A, the Tholians don't have a lot of ships. B, they don't have a lot of combat capable, like offensive firepower ships. And when they get into a fight with the Juggernauts, they are going to suffer big losses. So it'll be interesting to see how that works. No other Juggernaut there's a frigate here. I'm not sure why it's just sitting there, but there's a frigate here surrounded by a couple fleets by the Borak. I'm sure they'll be fine taking them out. But as you can see, the Borak are continuing to expand and explore along the border here, and they'll probably continue to do that, building out their base network along the border. And so that takes us to our final piece on the schedule. The big announcement. So I'm not going to reveal the big announcement right here, right now, of course, but you'll have to tune in 6 o'clock local time here Pacific. But you'll already see the notification or the thumbnail in the scheduled live stream that'll be coming up later today. So feel free to tune in live for that. Go Team Hydron, Daniel. Tisk. Yeah, you'll see the live stream for that is coming up later today. So feel free to tune in for that when you can see it, whether you're catching us on the replay or live. I will say that we've had some great success in sort of the recent weeks. As I mentioned at the very beginning of the game, we lost a player. And one of the things about this game overall is that this game's really fun to play, but we need a player base to play it. We started off with a certain sort of group of players, and we've been slowly losing them over time. We've played several iterations of this game, and these games have gone on for the better part of a year, just because of the length of time. And that when we get in sort of the stride of it, turns progress at about once a week. And that allows us to be able to do the role play, the combat, and various other things, while, of course, dealing with real-life issues. The challenge has been is that everyone's got competing things going on in their life, whether you're a hardcore gamer, you've got other games that you play, whether just real life sort of demands that are pulling you away from potentially having the time to do something like this, and various other things. So our goal in creating this channel, creating this stream, and trying to create this community is to build up a player base so that not only can we play this game continually, but to be able to create, in an ideal world, pockets of players in various places that can be able to play this game together using this kind of framework, using Vassal. I'm not sure how many folks who play this game even know that Vassal has a module for F&E and do this in this way. And so in the past, we've had games as large as 7 players. And we are aiming for a much larger group in the next iteration of this game. In that regard, the big announcement, we'll be talking about what that might look like and what we're going to be doing in that, to move towards that. But as we're building up to, and if you're watching this first, then please think about if you like this kind of game, if you like turn-based strategy, if you like Star Trek overall, or you're just a sci-fi fan, you like testing your wits against somebody else in a Risk, Axis and Allies, or in this case, Federation and Empire kind of way, then this is going to be the kind of game for you. And we are going to be changing sort of the paradigm when it comes to how we've played this in the past. And we're going to be changing the scope of what we do. One of the things when I think about games in the past that I've played, so for example, this is going back way back. So I was a huge fan of Civilization, the first iteration of that game. When did that come out? 96, 7, 8, something like that? 95? The first iteration of that game, I was playing it on a 386, I believe. And I've played every version of that game as it's come forward or come out. And one of the biggest sort of big leaps forward in that game was when it could go multiplayer. You had different versions where you could do it by mail, hot seats, stuff like that. But I really enjoyed the idea when you could play it online. Now, it changed the sort of the pace of the game and how you could play it because, of course, a turn-based strategy game is kind of strange in a online capacity versus real-time strategy games and things like that. But playing it online with folks was really fun because instead of playing the AI, which could become very predictable, playing against real players is really dynamic. In the first time that I played this game, I threw the group of guys that I was playing with, and unfortunately they were all guys, I threw them for a loop because I had experienced playing Civ, for example, online. And one of the things that first caught me off guard was sort of the rush and aggressiveness of some of these players. I mean, I think back to StarCraft, right? And some of the strategies there are pretty well known. And there was the Zerg rush that you would see. And people just build this huge amount of units and just flood them against your defenses and try and take you out. And that was really effective in many regards, in many examples. And I saw that basically played out in Civ. And at first I didn't think you could do that effectively, but I saw it play out really, really well. And I was like, oh, wow, okay, that's interesting. And then when I played this game, one of the things I was mindful of is, so in a Civ context, you play tall or you play wide. So you play tall in the sense of like you're able to focus on one city or a few cities and you build them up as much as you can. You really drive the tech rush and you get these highly potent, capable units. Not necessarily a lot of them, but you're just really powerful single units. And then with those, you're able to do a lot of damage. You're able to focus your attention on one opponent, dial in on them, cause critical damage, and slowly expand out. But your focus is tall versus the land grab wide option, which is, you just build out as wide as you can, eat up as much space as you can, and the momentum of your mass eventually creates a degree of momentum and tech and resource base that eventually puts you ahead of everybody else. You're just bigger than everybody else. And it was interesting to see that play out here because in the first game I did a tech rush, and that worked to a certain point. I saw other people do effectively the land grab and saw how that worked. And it was interesting to see the different strategies kind of play out. Also, when it came to sort of strategies, when it came to managing conflict, I, from a military background, having been a naval warfare officer in the Royal Canadian Navy, I was very mindful of speed and maneuverability. And so when I went for my tech rush, I was getting these ships that can move fast, and I had a better reach than the other person. So put it in sort of like a combat sports initiative or perspective, my reach on my jab was significantly greater than my opponent. So I could always reach out and touch them, and they could never touch me. So I was always doing damage to them, and they could never get me back. I was more maneuverable. I was able to disrupt their supply and repair capabilities with bases and things like that. And that was, when I first did it, it was very sort of off-putting to some of the other players. They were not ready for the pace and aggressiveness that I displayed, very sort of Patton-esque in the always be moving kind of perspective. And that put more pressure on them than they were used to. Now, they've since acclimatized to my approach, and I would frame the common approach that I see now in this game is very much sort of, the tortoise and the hare. It's very much a tortoise approach. Slow, incremental growth, a lot of redundancy, a lot of sort of defensibility as you move out. None of this move fast and hit hard kind of stuff. Because eventually when you move fast and hit hard, a weakness will be exposed because things will happen and you'll get sort of taken off track. And as soon as you're taken off your focus of your, move fast and hurt people, then you're going to get caught yourself. It's like throwing for the fences and then getting caught with a hook yourself and getting knocked out. So it's interesting to see how that works. Again, the thing that was so exciting about playing in a multiplayer way was the introduction of new personalities, new playing styles, new tactics, new strategies, new ways of playing. And it became really entertaining, really refreshing, really exciting to watch and play and experience. And when I started playing this online with the folks that I was playing with, I was introducing that element to them, and then of course them to me. And it was really fun in that regard. I think based on the length of time that a lot of us have been playing with each other, and the fact that we've been limited to a certain degree to what I would call a relatively small number of players, is that we all sort of know each other's styles at this point, or sort of preferred playing styles, and sort of what works and what doesn't work in this context. What I'm looking forward to in building out this player base is new personalities, new styles of play, new tactics and strategies that are going to be introduced that are going to take advantage of different sort of loopholes or weaknesses in other people's ways of playing. It'll be really exciting to see, and it'll be really sort of fun to watch it map out. Daniel, you say it's... Oh, a couple things here. Oh, goodness. Oh, wow. There's lots of stuff. Okay, hold on. Let me catch up. I've missed out on a whole bunch of these comments. All right, so going back a ways here. So Jim is laughing. Go Team Hydran. I think Dan wants you to pay some Old King taxes to the Hydrans, Tony. So for those of you who are watching this on the replay, Jim currently in our game is playing the Hydrans and has taken on the role of the Old Kings. So as soon as I find him, I'm going to kill him. Jim, as soon as I find you, I'm coming for you. And so yeah. So the Paul joins in. Get the Hydran. Here. Paul will hopefully be in the next campaign too. Woohoo! All right, on Paul. Paul? Question mark. Paul? Big smiley face. Paul Williams above. I've asked Paul, not related to me, but has the same last name as well. The Stalin quote, Tony. Quantity has a quality all its own. So true. So true. And that was, yeah, absolutely. I love that quote, actually. Daniel, it's the mark of a well-designed game if multiple strategies are viable. Absolutely. And this, I'm really looking forward to seeing how we can, with the introduction of new players, can really upend what has been working so well for so long, because I like testing. I like breaking things, so to speak, in the sense of I want to break the system or break the patterns of play that other people have and find new ways of working. I will warn you that there are some players out there, certain players in this game, who do not enjoy being challenged in that way, in the sense that when you test their assumptions and they stop working, or their tactics stop working, they get testy. That will be fun to watch in my devious way. I'm thinking like a Skeletor laugh in the back of my head. Okay, it's a mark of a yeah. Okay, so Jim says, wondered when you were going to look, Tony. Yeah, sorry. It's challenging when you're doing the live stream. I mean, sometimes I put it in front of me so I can see it, but if I'm distracted with the other screens, like there's only so many screens I can look at. Molon, I don't know what that. Okay, Molon Labe, don't know what that is. Anyway, so. Yes, big announcement coming later today. Please tune in and find out what's going on in the future of these campaigns and Star Trek Lost Stars. And just to summarize, we have been introducing some new players into the game. And the purpose of that is to be able to sort of introduce the system that we have in place. So if you want to think about it this way, we have sort of standardized templates and ways of playing, sort of like the mechanics of the game. Not the mechanics, we'll call it the user interface, the mechanics or the logistics of how we actually play the game. I mean, obviously we have Vassal, which is what you see here. This is the map of Vassal that you're seeing around me. And we have obviously email exchanges to be able to do role play. Would it be more useful to do that on Discord or other platforms? That's something we've discussed. I haven't come to a conclusion yet, but we've discussed using other means of communication. Right now, email seems to be the best, and coming up with an operational tempo about how we do things. So, for example, in early stage of the game, which you caught in some of the early episodes, when we were just sort of like doing these bursts of turns at a time, there's no operational tempo, really. It's first come, first serve. As fast as you can get turns in, they'll come back out as soon as the game master has the time to process those turns. Because that's one important thing about how we play this game. It's all people-based. Yes, we use computers, obviously, to be able to facilitate it, but we don't have like an algorithm in the background that does all the combat or the calculations or anything like that. That's all right here. We have a person who literally goes through combat, rolls dice, and does that piece. I mean, we have an automatic dice roller, but like goes through that process as if you were playing it on the tabletop. And so that process is something that's very manual in nature. Are there ways to scale it? Maybe. We haven't really explored that too much. One of the things we're very conscious of is, and one of the things that we're really emphasizing in playing this game is sort of the homage and the respect to the Amarillo Design Bureau. So ADB designed and built this game. We really enjoy this game, but we know that if we don't take action to increase its profile, it's going to sort of fizzle away and die, because the people who play this game are going to move on to other things or lose interest, or there's going to be less and less people interested in playing this game, and those who do still play it will become fewer and far between. So what we want to do is we want to amalgamate all of us in and around a common point of contact, a community, and a player base so we can interact with each other around the world. Right now, as of the streaming of this episode, we have players across the pond, so to speak, in the UK. I'm currently in Canada, in Victoria. We have folks in the US, and we have an international audience of players currently, and we want to build that out as much as possible. It would be great in a future, sort of in a year from now, if we could build a community of players of, let's say, 30 or more. That might be ambitious, but let's say as many as 30 players who can get together and play different iterations of this game in slower or faster paces, depending on their whatever's going on in their lives. But if you had a population of 30 players and we can rotate those players around playing with different people, that would be fun, exciting. And how often would you have the ability to play with as many as 30 players in a game like this? Yes, of course, if you're playing Total War online, or lots of other games, whether it's a first-person shooter, real-time strategy game, or even the turn-based ones like Civ 6, or Humankind, I think, is the most recent one that's set in that same vein. But either way, lots of games out there that you can play, and the population of players is thousands and thousands and thousands. And so you can play with those folks, of course. We're not going to get thousands and thousands of people here. Not anytime real soon, anyway. But we can certainly spread the word of how fun this game is. Find players out there who currently obviously want to play it and build out our community. And that is our goal here now. So look at that. I'm an hour, 20 minutes into this broadcast, and this is where we're at. So I see a couple more little notes. I'll read them. Come and take them. I'm wondering, come and take them. Is what you said to me in email. It's what you said to me in the email. Exactly, Dan. Then we shall warp in the... Then we shall warp in the shade. Yes, of course. Yeah, it's like the brakes are on ATM. Is that like the brakes are on at the moment? If I can get 10 people in one city playing SFB live, you can aim for 30 in an online war game. I hope so. Dan. And the fact that you can get 10 people playing SFB, that's awesome. We should get those folks. If you haven't already, please, for anyone who's watching this right now in the replay, and of course this is now an hour and 20 minutes in, so maybe you haven't watched to this late point, but if you have, please share this with as many other Star Trek and ADB fans as you know and love. Maybe you don't love them, but nonetheless, that might love this game because, like I say, we just want to build this community out as much as we can. Jim says, hey, I may bring 4 more myself, including Mr. Williams above. Paul Williams, big thumbs up. Well, like I say, we want to see as many of you join this campaign as possible, but I don't want to take out the thunder for the announcement later today. So I will leave it to the announcement later in the day, which is going to be in about 2.5 hours or so. All right. Thank you very much, everybody, for joining us here on today's live stream. If you have followed us up to this point, then please, you might be interested in what is coming down the pike. So hit that subscribe button with the notification bell if you're on YouTube. Give us a follow over on Twitch if you dare. And if you're on Facebook, then please, or if you're on any of these platforms, head over to Facebook, join our Facebook group, because through Facebook chat, we can have a better exchange of information. And that is the sort of the focal point as of right now, where we're all going to sort of gather around. This channel is our primary means of communication for us to stream this information out there for you to be able to see what's going on. But if you want to share text message back and forth and build that community, right now our Facebook group is the way to go. If you are liking this content and you want to be able to support it in some way, shape, or form, we do have a Patreon at patreon.com/LostStars. I will admit, as of right now, I have been a little negligent in posting to the Patreon. So I apologize for that. You will notice that some of those videos are a little dated versus some of the ones that have come out most recently. I would love for you to just, at the very least, take a pop over to there, take a look at what our Patreon looks like, and get back to me. Let me know either in the comments of this video or on our Facebook group. Let us know what you would like to see in a Patreon for a group like this. I mean, to be fair, my experience with Patreon is very limited, so I did the best I could with what we got. But if you want to see certain things, like you want to see certain perks, you want to see certain benefits, you want to see certain features, you want to see certain kind of like graphics and icons and things like that, I am not a graphic artist, but I do the best that I can. Then please put that forward in the comments or in the chat at facebook.com at our, my goodness. You know what I'm going to do? I'm just going to put it in the chat. Stand by. I'm going to put it in the chat. It's probably the easiest way to do it. Lost Stars. Here we go. I'm copy and pasting it and putting it in the chat. Bam. There it is. That's our Facebook Lost Stars page. Please head on over there and join us. Join the conversation and let me know what you do or don't like about our Patreon site. If you like it, great. If you don't like it, let me know what's wrong with it and what kind of things you'd like to see in there. What would motivate you to get involved? The pay brackets, or like the what do you want to call them? The Patreon levels are sort of arbitrarily picked. I would love to be able to set that up in a way that works best for you. If it's just like $1 a day, $1 an episode, or a certain amount a month, or if there's anything like that that you'd like to see, we would love to be able to build out an ability to have a better multimedia presence here, to be able to give you better videos, better graphics, better a website and community, message boards, all that kind of stuff. What can we do to make this more fun for you? How can we better connect you all? And how can we all have fun playing this game? That's the bottom line. So my name is Tony Morrow. This has been Star Trek Lost Stars. Thank you so much for joining us. I am going to say goodbye today. Say goodbye for now, but catch us on the live stream later, where we're going to talk about what's coming up in our special announcement. I will see you soon. Bye for now.